today's topic is we're going to break through the invisible barrier. And that means uncovering all of the hidden patterns, all of the hidden unconscious internal roadblocks that are holding you back from really being the man that you're meant to be and experiencing true freedom. Now, let me ask you a question. Have you ever been really, really highly motivated in life to achieve something where you're so fired up and you have that motivation for a little while, but then over a period of time, the motivation kind of dwindles, where you're two steps forward and then one step back? Does that ever happen to you? If that happened to you, comment one in the chat if that's happened to you before. Or have you ever been stuck between two conflicting desires where you feel like a part of me wants this, a part of me wants that, and you're kind of stuck right in between those two things? If that's been you, go ahead and comment a one in the chat as well. Or has there ever been something where you knew you could do it, you knew you wanted to do it, you knew you were capable of making it happen, but there was just something preventing you from your success, and you just weren't exactly sure what it was. You couldn't exactly put your finger on what was going on. Well, that's what we're going to talk about here today. And you might be wondering, like, how does this relate to me? Well, anytime that there's something that you want to do and then you're not doing it, the reason why that's happening is because there's an internal conflict holding you back from being able to be the man that you're meant to be or have the results that you want to have in your life. And I define an internal conflict as it's a tug of war in your mind, where you have these two opposing parts of yourself pulling you in different directions. And a lot of guys, what they try to do is they try to bang their head against the wall. They try to just force make it happen just through pure force of will, just through pure action, through pure intention. And that stuff works for a while. But anytime that you're having that internal struggle with yourself, you'll be making progress and then self-sabotage. Does that make sense? Now, I'll give you an example. I was talking to a gentleman one time, people, and there's a gentleman I was working with. He's a pilot, and he's not just any pilot. This guy was the captain of the airlines that he was working for. And so he was the man, right? He was in charge of safety. He was in charge of making sure everybody was, taken care of. He was in charge of the training. And when you're up in the air, you got to be on, right? You got to be in command. You got to make sure you're alert. You got to make sure you're present. Does that make sense? So this guy is in charge in his life. But then he had a problem. When he went home, what would happen was he said, my wife kind of runs the show, and I'm a people pleaser. My kids don't respect me, and my wife doesn't respect me. And I'm completely different from when I'm in the air, when I'm at home. Does that make sense? There are these two different versions of him. And I was asking him, I was like, what changes when you get home? He goes, it's like I become a different guy. It's like there's a different version of me. And I asked him a question. I go, what would happen if you started to take the who you are when you're at your best, the pilot, what would happen if you took him home? And he thought about that for a second, and he goes, well, what do you mean? And I gave him a personal example. I said, there was once upon a time, do you guys know what professional wrestling is? Like jumping off the top rope, body slamming, like Hulk Hogan, that type of stuff. I used to want to be a professional wrestler. I actually did it for a while. I'm going somewhere with this. It's going to make sense in a moment. And when you're a wrestler, you got to be a character, and you got to be on. And I was on the way. I had a really, really big match. It was with a guy named Booker T. And he's like a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's a former world heavyweight champion. And I had a tryout match with him coming up that night. And on my way to the arena, my girlfriend calls me, and all of a sudden, she breaks up with me. She goes, hey, we're not going to, basically some stuff had happened. I cheated on you, and I'm breaking up with you. And I'm on my way to the arena. What do you think happened to me in my body? I shriveled up, right? Like all of a sudden I'm depressed, I'm sad. That's all I can think about. I'm distracted. And I'm in the arena, and I'm about to go out through the curtain, and my friends are like, you got to get yourself amped up. And I was just not doing too good. I was, really, really feeling the effects of that, and I wasn't in the best state. But then all of a sudden, they play a song before you got to the ring. And my music started hitting, and I started jumping up and down. I started like slapping my chest and pumping myself up, and I went through the curtain, and my shoulders went back and my head went up, and I was the most confident guy in the universe for like 15 minutes. And then what do you think happened when I went backstage? When I went backstage, the match was over. I turn around and I start to walk through the curtain, and it's like as I walked through the curtain, it was like I was going through a portal. You know what I mean? This confidence that I had a second ago, literally in 3 seconds, evaporated. And as I walked through the curtain, my shoulders slumped and I started to get depressed again. The thing was, though, it happened so fast. It happened so fast that I caught it. And I go, wait a minute. Like, why was I so confident a second ago, but not here? Why did I think it was okay for me to bring this version of myself out there when I'm performing, but it wasn't okay for me to do that when I'm backstage? Like, what's the difference between there and here? Does that make sense? And there's a book that I read. It's called, Todd Herman. It was called The Alter Ego Effect. The author's name was Todd Herman. And he says Superman and Clark was the real alter ego. Superman or Clark Kent? And he goes, actually, Clark Kent was the alter ego because he was hiding how great he really was to try to fit in. Does that make sense? And I think we all do that in some ways, don't we? And that's what I was explaining to the pilot when he was saying, "Hey, I'm the man on the plane, but when I come home, it all changes." And so what I share with them, I go, there's these things called internal conflicts, and they're these invisible barriers that are holding you back from really reaching your full potential. And I identified a few of them, and I want to share them with you here today, because I think as men, we all struggle with these sometimes, but because there's no words for them, we have a hard time pinpointing what they are, and we have a hard time fixing them. You follow me so far? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my screen share, and that way I'm going to be able to share with you exactly what the internal conflicts are and how to fix them. So stand by. Let me pull this up and transition. Can you guys see that? Give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Okay. All right, sweet. I'm using a virtual camera. Okay, so just as a quick aside, that was me before and that's me after. And I'm just showing that to show you, like, this is the effects of what can happen when you really align your internal conflicts, when you really get to the core of who you are. And it doesn't have to take decades and decades and decades. You can actually make the transformation in a couple of hours and then sustain it long term with some actions and habits and things like that. But this was the change that happened. I was completely filled with unconscious beliefs, internal conflicts, patterns that were holding me back. And then once I figured some of this stuff out, it changed the game for me. Okay, so I'm gonna get into what these are. We talked about in the last time. If you guys watched here at the last talk that I did, we talked about the 7 levels of self-mastery. Like, I can post the link if you guys want to see that one. But we talked about how everybody has a model of the world. Two people can grow up in the same environment and have totally radically different experiences of what that means. People interpret their reality different. And it's through these 7 levels. Everybody's map of the world goes through these 7 levels. So it's your purpose or higher purpose or mission. It's your identity, who you believe you are, your mindset, which is your beliefs and your values, your energy, emotions, and state, which is your emotional state, your physical state, how you show up every day. Number 4 is your skills, resources, and knowledge. 6 is your habits, actions, and behaviors. And number 7 is your environment or your conditioning. I'm going through this fast because I want to make sure I can get through all of this, but just know these 7 pieces make up what your life is. Everybody has all 7. We organize them differently a little bit, and we have inner conflicts in each. If you ever feel like you're out of alignment, it might be because there's a misalignment here in these 7 levels. I'm going to show you what they are, though. So we have identity, mindset, energy. These are the top 4 with your mission there. But the bottom 3, environment, conditioning, habits, actions, behaviors, skills, resources, and knowledge. Most people, what they do is they cycle through these, where they try to take more action, they try to generate more income, more resources, make more time for themselves, learn more skills, but it doesn't work, and they cycle over and over and over again until they burn out, and they go, I got to change my condition, I got to change my environment, I got to leave the relationship, I got to leave the career that I'm in. But have you ever been in a situation where you change circumstances and the same thing happens again? Just with different people, different situation, but it's like the same thing happens. The top 4. Because if you can keep changing, let me put it this way, your external reality is just the mirror of your internal reality. And your internal reality is made up of these top 4 things: your higher purpose, your identity, your mindset, and your energy and your emotions. But each one of these could have an inner conflict. So here's what they are. You could have something called an identity conflict. And so an identity conflict is like this. It's what I talked about before. A part of me wants something, but a part of me doesn't. Part of me, like there's a version of me that's the man on the airlines, and there's a version of me that's unconfident at home. There's a version of me that's great when I'm in the ring performing, and there's a version of me that's unconfident when I'm backstage. Does that make sense? So it's like there's these two different competing parts to yourself where you're not able to really step into your greatness. And until you can align that identity conflict, it's going to be two steps forward, one step back, or self-sabotage. Do you follow me so far? Okay, comment below if that makes sense. Ever had one of those yourself? And now, so the next one, well, actually, let me pull my camera off here. So this is what it is. There's you, there's that higher version of you, and then it's like a tug of war where a part of you is going one way, a part of you is going the other way, and it's really hard to make progress until you integrate those. Does that make sense? Okay. So now the next one is a mindset conflict, and that's in your beliefs and your values. So number one, there could be a limiting belief. We all know about limiting beliefs, right? We've heard, everybody's talked about those. That's something that's really easy to talk about. But what people don't know is number one, if you try to change a limiting belief, but you don't change the value, the belief will grow back. Because your limiting beliefs stem from your values, and your values stem from your emotions. I'll explain in a moment. But also, if you change a limiting belief, but you have an identity conflict, you're still going to have that, part of me wants this, part of me wants that. Does that make sense? It has to all be aligned, or else it's not going to make the progress you really want. So you have a limiting belief, but really what I want to talk about here is values conflicts. And this is where a lot of conflicts come into play. So a values conflict, I'm going to take my screen off. A values conflict is basically when you value things very, very highly. So let's say you value love, success, freedom, relationships, and career. You might value all of those things highly, right? But what if love and freedom, right? What if love means being in a relationship and freedom means being free? Could there be an internal conflict there where you might not really be able to get the full results you're looking for? Could that create a push-pull tug of war? Or let's say, for example, you value relationships and career. Could relationships potentially pull you away from your career, or could career pull you away from your relationship? So you have these different values sometimes, depending on how you rank them or depending on how you define them, they might not fully integrate and they might create conflicts within each other. Does that make sense? So a lot of times why there's push-pull or there's not a lot of progress being made is because there's either an identity conflict, a part of me does, a part of me doesn't, or there's a conflict in the values where something you value very highly, it's competing with something else. And when there's that competition and they're not integrated, that's going to create an issue. And then there's another level here on your mindset. There's a motivation conflict. So we have love, success, freedom, relationships, career. If I ask everybody in this group who here values love, everybody's going to say yes for the most part, right? But the difference is, what does love mean to you and why is love important to you? If your motivation for love is because, I just love, I love having the feeling of being in a relationship, it's, the spice of life, versus love matters to me because I don't want to feel abandoned. Is that a totally different motivation, yes or no? If you value success, but just to not feel like a failure, is that going to completely change your experience of success, yes or no? What about freedom? I want to experience freedom, but to not feel constrained or tied down. Or I value relationships to not be hurt again. What's important to me is to not be hurt again in relationship. Or career. What's important to me in career is I want to not have work a job that I hate. Your motivation for the value is very, very key. And anytime you have a motivation that's to move away from pain or to move away from what you don't want, that's when you'll have something where you'll make progress and then the progress suddenly just goes away because you're trying to get out of pain, right? You get more of what you focus on. If you value health to not be sick, you'll do just enough to not be sick, but not push it forward. Does that make sense? So we want to make sure, number one, you have your identity conflicts aligned. Number two, your limiting beliefs, for the most part, should be sorted, but really your beliefs come from your values. And so is there a conflict in the values? And then even more than that, is there a conflict in the motivation for the reason why you want the values? Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So identity conflicts, mindset conflicts, which could be limiting beliefs, values conflicts, or motivation conflict. And now there's one level deeper. And one level deeper here is your emotions and your energy and your state. Because a lot of people go through life with trapped negative emotions, and they come from significant emotional events from the past. So they might have anger, sadness, fear, guilt, shame, hurt, even apathy or numbness, right? But emotional baggage is when the emotional response that you're having to a trigger is out of proportion. There's normal emotion, there's emotion that's appropriate for the situation, your boundaries are getting crossed, things like that. And then there's overblown emotion that's preventing you from really stepping into who you're really meant to be, or it's holding you back from things. Does that make sense? So we want to make sure that there's not trapped emotional baggage still that's holding you back. So the conflicts we're looking at here is identity conflicts, a mindset conflict either in the limiting beliefs, values, or motivation, and then there's a conflict in your energy or your emotions or your state, which is trapped negative emotions. Now, it goes one level deeper than that. So I'm going to share it with you here. Your environment and conditioning. Your environment and your conditioning. Let me just move my, let me move my personal screen up so you can see me. There you go. So your environment and conditioning. All of those negative emotions come from your early childhood conditioning and imprinting or significant emotional events. They're leftover emotional residue or their leftover emotional hurt from past emotional events. Most people live their life where their early conditioning in their environment controls what they do habitually, their actions, and then that gives them an idea of what they have access to, like wealth, finances, money, time. My parents were never good with money, things like that. And then all of those early experiences get trapped in you, and it leads to stuck emotion, or there's still baggage from the past, which then, of course, is going to affect your mindset, doesn't it? And your values are going to come from the past. And all of this is going to stack up and it's going to prevent you from really being able to step into your ideal identity. Do you follow so far? We want to make sure we clear all of this. Now, here's the good news. You don't have to do that. It doesn't have to be a painstaking process. You can actually do this quite simply if you know where to look. So if you take a look here, the reason why people don't get number one, their mission or their higher purpose, is because number one, they're unclear what it is, or they know what they don't want, they don't know what they do want, so there's no real purpose or clear driving force. But your identity conflicts stem from your mindset and your beliefs about yourself. But your beliefs about yourself stem from your values, right? And what you're getting depends on your motivation. But your mindset really has a lot to do with your energy, right? Because if you're in a bad energy, if you have trapped emotions, is that going to affect your mindset? Yes or no? Big time. But your energy and your emotions is being controlled by all of this early childhood conditioning and significant emotional events from the past. Do you see how that all cascades and all stacks, right? So here's what I found. If you can put somebody through a process where you can get them to reorient or to recode or to re-experience that early conditioning or to get a lesson or a learning, what will happen is your unconscious mind, all it wants to do is to keep you safe. So if it gets the lesson, though, it doesn't have to hold on to that imprinting. You'll still remember it happened, but you're not going to have the emotional charge anymore. So what I discovered, and this is how I turn my life around, if you get to the root cause of the conditioning, 0 to 7, and you clear any significant emotional events, the trapped emotions will clear. You'll still have access to emotions that are appropriate, right? But it's not going to be overblown through baggage anymore. And when you get rid of the emotional baggage, an interesting thing happens. Your values, like your motivation, it goes from moving away from to moving towards almost automatically. And then your beliefs tend to go. And then when your values and your mindset and your beliefs align, what you'll find is typically those identity conflicts, part of me wants A, part of me wants B, they'll snap right into focus and it's going to align you body, mind, and spirit if you're able to do it this way. And then you'll finally be able to live your mission or your higher purpose. Does that make sense? So what I have a question for you is, on a level 1 to 10, how much do you feel like you've really got a handle on the past? How much do you feel like, 100% I'm clear from all internal conflicts, right? 10 means I'm totally good. I have no internal conflicts whatsoever. 1 is like I have every single one of them in every single category. I got to figure this out. And like 5, 6, 7s, you're somewhere in between. So give yourself a ranking 1 to 10 real quick on how you think these might be affecting you. And then also comment below what's the one that you're personally most familiar with and how has that been holding you back? So what's the one you're personally most familiar with and how is that holding you back? And then finally, what's the first step? What's the first thing you can do to help start resolving that? And so we had about 20 minutes today. I gave you the mother load. We're giving you from the fire hose right now. I did this really, really quickly. But I got 2 things for you that I think could help. Number 1, I have a self-mastery blueprint which goes through this exact model, what I talked about, the 7 levels of mastery and the internal conflicts. It's going to explain in detail how to start solving some of these, right? So comment blueprint below if you want the blueprint, and I'll send that to you. And then also, I've made this really easy. I have an emotional inventory and a belief inventory. It's the same sheet of paper. And what it does is it goes through all of the possible trapped emotions that you may have, all of the potential trap limiting beliefs that you may have, and it's a checklist, and there's tons of them, and you're going to be able to identify exactly what might be holding you back specifically, so that way you'll be able to work on it. So I already done the work for you. I got a checklist for the emotional and beliefs inventory, and then also I have the self-mastery blueprint. So comment blueprint below if you want to get the blueprint, and comment inventory below if you want to get the inventory, or just comment both and I'll send you both. But I wanted to give you some value here today. I hope this sheds some light on where you may have some internal conflicts, where it might be holding you back. And I'm Jared with Self Mastery for Men. It's a pleasure serving you guys here today, and I'll see you around the